The council chamber fell silent as Captain Elena Vasquez placed the data tablet on the presentation podium. Around her, representatives from 17 different species watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright skepticism. The holographic projection flickered to life above the table, displaying the sleek, aggressive lines of humanity's proposed warship. "The Defiance," Vasquez began, her voice steady despite the weight of countless eyes upon her. "A vessel designed to combine the firepower of a dreadnought with the speed and maneuverability of a destroyer-class ship." Shipmaster Kavalix, the reptilian Tharn engineer who served as the Council's chief naval designer, leaned forward in his seat. His scaled hand moved across his own tablet, running preliminary calculations. The longer he looked at the specifications, the deeper his frown became. "Impossible," Kavalix said, his voice a low hiss that carried across the chamber. "The power requirements alone would require a reactor 3 times the size you have allocated. The mathematics do not support this design." Vasquez had expected this reaction. She had spent the last 6 months preparing for every objection, every doubt, every mathematical proof that would be thrown at her proposal. "Our reactor design is different from standard galactic models. We call it a quantum flux reactor. It operates on principles that violate known laws of thermodynamics," Admiral Korath interrupted. The avian Skria officer's feathers ruffled with agitation. "Captain Vasquez, we appreciate humanity's enthusiasm, but this council cannot authorize resources for a project built on fantasy." Ambassador Chen, sitting in the human delegation section, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He had warned Vasquez that the council would be difficult to convince. Humanity was still new to galactic politics, having joined the council only 15 years ago. They were the newcomers, the species that still thought in terms of chemical rockets and nuclear fission, while others had mastered antimatter and gravity manipulation centuries ago. Kavalix stood, his tall frame casting a shadow across the holographic display. "I have run the numbers 5 times. Your proposed reactor will create a cascading failure within its containment field. The result would be a singularity that consumes your ship and everything within a 10-kilometer radius. You are not proposing a warship, Captain. You are proposing a suicide bomb." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the council chamber. Several representatives were already closing their tablets, preparing to move on to the next agenda item. The human proposal was dead in the water, as far as they were concerned. Vasquez felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her voice calm. "Shipmaster Kavalix, I respect your expertise. However, I believe there are factors you have not considered in your calculations. Our reactor does not operate within the same parameters as galactic standard models." "Because it cannot operate at all," another voice called out. It was Councillor Vreen, an insectoid politician whose compound eyes gleamed with something that looked like satisfaction. "This council has reviewed your proposal thoroughly. The conclusion is unanimous. Humanity lacks the technical capability to construct such a vessel. We recommend you submit a revised proposal using proven technology." The word stung because Vasquez knew what they really meant. "Stick to what you know. Stay in your lane. Let the older, wiser species handle the complex engineering." She had heard variations of this her entire career, first on Earth when she proposed designs that challenged conventional wisdom, and now here, on the galactic stage. "I understand the Council's concerns," Vasquez said carefully. "However, I would like to request observer status for this project. Humanity will fund and construct the Defiance independently. We ask only that Council observers be allowed to monitor our progress." Kavalix's eyes narrowed. "You intend to build this death trap regardless of our warnings?" "We intend to prove that our design is sound," Vasquez replied. 3 of our colony worlds have been destroyed in the last year by an unknown hostile force. 20 million humans are dead. We need this ship, and we need it operational within 18 months. With respect, Shipmaster, we do not have time to wait for approval that may never come." The chamber erupted in argument. Some species protested that allowing humans to pursue such a dangerous project was irresponsible. Others argued that humanity had the right to defend itself, even if their methods were questionable. Admiral Korath raised a wing for silence. "The Council will grant observer status," Korath announced. "However, humanity assumes all responsibility for any consequences of this project. If your ship fails in the manner Shipmaster Kavalix predicts, do not expect the Council to mount a rescue operation." Vasquez nodded. It was more than she had hoped for. and less than she needed. Understood, Admiral. Thank you. As the council moved on to other matters, Vasquez gathered her materials and left the chamber. Ambassador Chen caught up with her in the corridor outside. That went about as well as expected, Chen said quietly. Are you certain about this, Elena? If Kavalix is right and that reactor fails, it won't fail, Vasquez said. James Okoye is the smartest physicist I have ever worked with. If he says the quantum flux reactor will work, then it will work. The council is looking at this through the lens of their own technology. They cannot imagine that there might be another way. Chen sighed. And if you are wrong? Vasquez thought about the colony worlds. She thought about the children who would never grow up, the families torn apart, the cities reduced to radioactive ash by weapons that left no survivors to tell what had happened. She thought about the enemy that struck without warning and disappeared without a trace. Then we die trying, she said. But at least we will have tried. She made her way to the human section of the orbital station, where her engineering team waited in a converted cargo bay that served as their temporary headquarters. When she entered, all eyes turned toward her. They read the answer in her face before she spoke. They said no, Chief Engineer Rodriguez said. It was not a question. They said it is impossible, Vasquez replied. So now we get to prove them wrong. Get the team ready. We leave for Sector 7 in 6 hours. We have a warship to build. The room erupted in determined activity. Her team had known this moment was coming. They had prepared for it. Now the real work would begin. The deep space construction facility in Sector 7 looked more like organized chaos than a military shipyard. Prefabricated modules drifted in precise holding patterns around the central assembly frame, while dozens of construction drones moved between them like metal insects. At the heart of it all, the skeletal framework of the Defiance was taking shape. Dr. James Okoye floated in zero gravity near the reactor housing. His magnetic boots disengaged as he maneuvered around the massive spherical chamber. Through his helmet's heads-up display, he could see the quantum field projectors aligning into their final positions. Each projector was a masterpiece of engineering, capable of manipulating reality at the subatomic level in ways that still made some of his colleagues nervous. Talk to me, James. Vasquez's voice crackled through his helmet comm. She was watching from the command center, monitoring every aspect of the construction. Are we on schedule? Okoye pulled himself to the primary control panel and checked the alignment readings. The projectors are at 97% optimal positioning. We will be ready for the first power test in 48 hours. 2 days ahead of schedule, Chief Engineer Rodriguez commented from his position near the hull assembly. I am starting to think this crazy idea might actually work. It will work, Okoye said with absolute certainty. The Council's engineers are brilliant, but they think inside the box that their technology has built for them. They see a reactor and assume it must work like their reactors. They see power generation and assume it must follow their rules. He activated the holographic display, showing the intricate web of quantum field interactions that would make the reactor function. But we are not generating power in the traditional sense. We are borrowing it. The quantum foam that underlies reality is filled with virtual particles constantly appearing and disappearing. We are simply stabilizing those particles long enough to extract their energy before they collapse back into nothing. You are describing something that sounds like stealing energy from the universe itself, a new voice said. Okoye turned to see a figure in a sleek environmental suit approaching through the construction zone. He recognized the suit's design as a sorry standard. Who are you? Rodriguez demanded, his hand moving toward the emergency alert button. The newcomer removed her helmet, revealing delicate features and the distinctive head crests of the Asari species. My name is Liara Tavex. I am an engineering consultant hired by one of the Council observation teams, but I am not here to spy. I am here because I think you might be onto something revolutionary. Vasquez's voice came through the comm with an edge of warning. Rodriguez, security sweep now. Already on it, Captain, Rodriguez replied. Her credentials check out. She is listed as an official observer. Liara moved closer to the reactor display, her eyes widening as she studied the design. This is extraordinary. You are not violating thermodynamics at all. You are exploiting a loophole in quantum field theory that most species never considered because our technology evolved along different paths. Exactly, Okoye said, relaxing slightly. It was refreshing to speak with someone who understood what they were attempting. The Council keeps saying we are breaking the laws of physics. But we are not. We are just using those laws in ways they never imagined. Over the next several weeks, construction progressed faster than anyone had dared hope. The hull came together section by section, each plate of advanced composite armor fitting into place with millimeter precision. Weapon systems were installed and tested. Life support systems came online. The defiance was becoming real, but not everyone was happy about humanity's progress. The explosion happened during a routine shift change. One of the quantum projectors shattered in a cascade of sparks and molten metal, sending shrapnel through the reactor chamber. Alarms screamed throughout the facility as emergency doors slammed shut, containing the damage to a single section. Okoye was thrown against a bulkhead by the blast wave. His suit's integrity held, but his left arm hung at an awkward angle. Through the pain and the ringing in his ears, he could hear Rodriguez shouting orders, organizing damage control teams. Sabotage, Vasquez said flatly when she arrived at the reactor chamber 20 minutes later. She held up a data chip recovered from the wreckage. Someone planted a feedback loop in the projector's control system. This was deliberate. Who would do this? Okoye asked as a medical technician examined his arm. The Council observers? Maybe. Or maybe someone who does not want humanity to succeed. Vasquez turned to Rodriguez. Double the security. No one enters this facility without 3 levels of clearance, and find out who had access to that projector. The investigation revealed that the saboteur had used stolen credentials from a Council supply ship that had docked 2 days earlier. By the time security tracked the false identity, whoever was responsible had already left the facility. They would never know who had tried to destroy their ship. We lost 3 weeks, Rodriguez said grimly as they surveyed the damage. And we will need to replace the entire projector assembly. The parts alone will take time to fabricate. Then we work faster, Vasquez said. We have a deadline and people are counting on us. They worked in shifts around the clock, pushing themselves to exhaustion and beyond. Okoye designed a new projector assembly that was not only more robust but more efficient than the original. Liara, who had proven herself trustworthy, contributed ideas that helped streamline the power distribution network. Rodriguez and his construction teams performed miracles of engineering, completing in days what should have taken weeks. Finally, the moment arrived. The reactor was complete, the projectors aligned, the containment field generators online. Every sensor in the facility was focused on the reactor chamber as Okoye initialized the startup sequence. Beginning quantum field stabilization, he announced. His hands moved across the control panel with practiced precision. Field coherence at 20%, 30%, 50%. Vasquez watched the readouts with intense focus. The numbers were climbing exactly as the simulations had predicted. Around the facility, engineers held their breath. 70%, 80%, field stable and holding. Okoye's voice remained calm, but there was an undercurrent of excitement. Beginning power extraction now. The reactor came to life, not with the roar of chemical engines or the hum of antimatter reactors, but with a sound like reality itself taking a deep breath. The quantum projectors glowed with an inner light that seemed to exist in colors the human eye was not designed to perceive. Power flooded through the Defiance's systems. The displays showed numbers that made Rodriguez laugh in disbelief. 340% of predicted output, he said. James, you magnificent genius. It actually works better than you said it would. The quantum foam is denser in this region of space than I estimated, Okoye explained, unable to keep the smile off his face. We are getting more virtual particles per cubic meter than the simulations predicted. Vasquez activated her comm link. All stations, this is Vasquez. The reactor is online and stable. Begin full systems check. Throughout the facility, systems that had been running on auxiliary power surged to full capacity. The Defiance's sensors came online, sweeping space with unprecedented range and resolution. Weapon systems charged to standby status. The ship was waking up. In the Council observation post, automated systems were already transmitting data back to the Council chambers. Within hours, the message would reach them. The humans had done the impossible. The Defiance was real, and it was everything they had claimed it would be. Shipmaster Kavalix received the transmission in his private quarters. He read through the data 3 times, checking the numbers against his own calculations. Then he did something he rarely did. He admitted he had been wrong. Prepare my transport, he told his aide. I need to visit the human construction facility immediately. Captain Marcus Webb had commanded warships for 20 years. but he had never seen anything like the Defiance. He walked through the corridors of the partially completed vessel, noting the exposed conduits and unfinished bulkheads with a practiced eye. The ship was only 80% complete, but she already felt alive in a way that other vessels never had. "She is beautiful," Webb said to Vasquez as they stood on the bridge. Through the viewport, construction drones continued their endless work, racing against a deadline that seemed to grow more urgent with each passing day. "She is unfinished," Vasquez replied. "The weapon systems are online, but we have no shields. The armor is incomplete. Half the crew quarters are still open to vacuum. She needs at least another 2 months before she is ready for combat." Webb turned to face her. "When I accepted this command, I knew I might be flying an unfinished ship into battle. The question is whether she can fight at all." Before Vasquez could answer, alarms shrieked through the facility. Rodriguez's voice came through the comm system, tight with urgency. "Captain Webb, Captain Vasquez, we have multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. 3 heavy cruisers. Krell signatures." "The Krell," Webb said quietly. The name alone was enough to send fear through any experienced officer. The Krell Dominion had been the nightmare in the dark for the past year, appearing without warning to devastate colony worlds before vanishing again. Now they had found the construction facility. "How long until they reach us?" Vasquez asked. 18 minutes at their current speed," Rodriguez replied. "The facility defense grid is powering up, but we both know it will not hold against 3 heavy cruisers." Webb looked at the Defiance's status board. She was incomplete, untested, and had a crew of barely 200 when she was designed for 500. But she was the only warship in the system. "Prepare for emergency launch," Webb ordered. "All personnel to battle stations. Anyone not assigned to the Defiance evacuates to the emergency shuttles now." "Captain, we are not ready," one of the junior officers protested. "Half our systems are still being installed." "Then we fight with what we have," Webb said. "Because if we do not, everyone in this facility dies. Move." The next 10 minutes were controlled chaos. Crew members scrambled to their stations while construction workers fled to the evacuation points. Vasquez found herself torn between evacuating with the civilian contractors and staying aboard to help manage the ship's incomplete systems. She chose to stay. "I know this ship better than anyone," she told Webb. "You need me in engineering." Webb did not argue. He had read her file and knew she had combat experience from the early colony wars. "Get to engineering and keep that reactor running no matter what happens." The Defiance's engines ignited for the first time under combat conditions. The quantum flux reactor poured power through the ship's systems, and she pulled away from the construction facility with acceleration that would have been impossible for a vessel her size using conventional drives. Shipmaster Kavalix, who had arrived at the facility only hours earlier to inspect the human achievement, found himself trapped aboard the Defiance as she launched. He made his way to the bridge, his scaled features tight with concern. "This is madness," Kavalix said. 3 Krell heavy cruisers against an incomplete ship with a skeleton crew. "We should evacuate." "There is nowhere to evacuate to," Webb replied calmly. He was studying the tactical display, calculating firing solutions and approach vectors. "The Krell will destroy the facility and hunt down the shuttles. Our only chance is to hurt them badly enough that they withdraw." "You cannot hurt them," Kavalix insisted. "Krell heavy cruisers have shields that can absorb antimatter warheads. Their hulls are reinforced with materials that were not designed to handle railgun rounds traveling at a significant fraction of light speed," Webb interrupted. "Our weapons are kinetic, not energy-based. We are going to get close and hit them with everything we have." The Krell formation split as they detected the Defiance's approach. Their commander, Warmaster Drethok, recognized the human design from intelligence reports. He had expected to find the ship incomplete and vulnerable in the construction dock. Instead, she was racing toward him with suicidal speed. "All ships, focus fire on the human vessel," Drethok ordered. "Destroy it before it can reach engagement range." Particle beams lanced through space, converging on the Defiance. Without shields, the ship had no defense except her armor and her speed. Webb threw the ship into a violent corkscrew pattern, pushing the reactor to 120% of its rated output. "Armor taking hits on the starboard side," Rodriguez reported. "Hull breaches on decks 7 and 8. Emergency bulkheads holding. Keep us moving," Webb said. "Weapons prepare for point-blank engagement. Target the lead cruiser's engineering section. The Defiance closed to within 5 kilometers of the Krell formation, so close that their shields could not focus properly. Webb inverted the ship and fired the main railgun battery. Magnetically accelerated tungsten rounds the size of cargo containers slammed into the Krell cruiser at velocities that turned them into shaped charges of kinetic energy. The Krell shields flashed and overloaded. The rounds punched through the hull like it was paper, tearing through compartments and systems before erupting out the far side in geysers of atmosphere and debris. "Direct hit," the weapons officer shouted. "Their reactor's going critical." The Krell cruiser exploded in a flash of light that lit up the entire star system. The shockwave caught the Defiance and sent her tumbling. Webb fought to regain control as alarms screamed throughout the ship. In engineering, Vasquez watched the reactor readouts spike dangerously. "We are redlining across the board," she called out. "We need to reduce power or we risk a containment breach." "Not yet," Webb's voice came back. "We have 2 more targets." The second Krell cruiser was already turning to face them, but the Defiance was faster. Webb used the ship's superior acceleration to circle around behind the enemy vessel, staying in the blind spot where their weapons could not track effectively. He brought the ship so close that they were practically touching the Krell hull. "Ramming speed," Webb ordered. "Captain, the ship cannot take," Rodriguez began. "Do it." The Defiance's armored prow crashed into the Krell cruiser's engine section at full power. Metal shrieked and tore. The impact threw everyone on the bridge against their restraints. Warning lights flooded every display as structural stress pushed the ship's frame to its limits. But the Krell cruiser fared worse. Her engines detonated, and the secondary explosions tore through her spine. She broke in half, both sections tumbling away into the void. The third Krell cruiser, seeing 2 of her sister ships destroyed in minutes, decided that discretion was the better part of valor. Drethok stared at his displays in disbelief as the human ship, smoking and damaged but still operational, began to turn toward him. "Withdraw," Drethok ordered. "All ships retreat to hyperspace." The surviving Krell cruiser accelerated away, her captain more interested in survival than revenge. Within moments, she vanished into hyperspace, leaving the Defiance alone among the debris of her former companions. On the bridge, Webb finally allowed himself to breathe. "Damage report. 30% of the ship is damaged or non-functional," Rodriguez said. "We have 47 crew casualties, 12 confirmed dead. The reactor is stable but needs immediate maintenance. We are venting atmosphere from 17 sections." Webb nodded slowly. They had won, but the cost had been high. "Get rescue teams to the wounded. Begin damage control procedures. And someone get me a status report on the construction facility." Kavalix approached Webb, his expression unreadable. "That was the most reckless display of combat tactics I have ever witnessed. You broke every rule of engagement, I know. But we won," Webb said simply. "Yes," Kavalix admitted. "You won." He activated his comlink, broadcasting on the frequency that would reach the council chambers. "This is Shipmaster Kavalix to the Galactic Council. I am transmitting combat data from the engagement. The humans did not build a warship. They built a monster. A beautiful, terrible monster." The council chambers had never been so divided. On one side of the argument stood those who saw the Defiance as humanity's salvation, proof that the younger species could contribute meaningfully to galactic defense. On the other side stood those who feared what humanity had created, a weapon so powerful that it threatened the delicate balance of power that had kept the galaxy stable for centuries. Councillor Vreen stood at the speaker's podium, his insectoid features twisted in what might have been concern or calculation. "The combat data from Sector 7 is clear. The human vessel violated 17 separate naval treaties in a single engagement, ramming attacks, weapons fire at point-blank range, deliberate overloading of reactor systems. These are not the tactics of a civilized military force. They are the actions of pirates and terrorists." Ambassador Chen rose from his seat, his face carefully neutral despite the anger burning beneath. Councillor Vreen, with respect, the Defiance was defending a civilian construction facility from Krell attack. Captain Webb used the tactics necessary to protect innocent lives against overwhelming odds. He won an impossible victory and saved thousands of workers. At what cost? Vreen shot back. 47 casualties on a ship with only 200 crew. Nearly a quarter of the personnel dead or wounded. The vessel itself is barely functional. This is not victory, Ambassador. This is reckless disregard for life. Admiral Korath, who had been silent throughout the debate, finally spoke. The Krell heavy cruiser that escaped has undoubtedly reported back to the Dominion. They now know that humanity possesses a vessel capable of destroying their warships. What do you think their response will be? Escalation, Kovalik said from his seat in the engineering section. The Krell will mass their forces and attempt to destroy the Defiance before she can be repaired and reinforced. They will see her as a threat that must be eliminated. Exactly, Vreen said, seizing on the point. The Defiance has made humanity, and by extension the entire Council, a target. The most prudent course of action is to decommission the vessel immediately and return to conventional defense strategies. Vasquez, sitting in the human delegation section, felt her hands clench into fists. After everything they had accomplished, after proving that their design worked, the Council was preparing to throw it all away out of fear. She wanted to stand and argue, but Ambassador Chen had warned her to let him handle the politics. The debate raged for hours. Species that had never agreed on anything found common cause in opposing the Defiance, while others argued passionately for humanity's right to defend itself using whatever means necessary. The chamber echoed with raised voices in a dozen different languages. In a private office adjacent to the council chambers, Admiral Korath reviewed classified intelligence reports that had arrived that morning. Something about Counselor Vreen's arguments bothered him. The insectoid's opposition to the Defiance seemed too passionate, too personal. Korath had survived in council politics for 3 decades by trusting his instincts, and those instincts were screaming that something was wrong. He began pulling transaction records, communication logs, and travel manifests. What he found made his blood run cold. Vreen had received substantial financial transfers from shell corporations linked to Krell business interests. There were encrypted communications sent to coordinates in Krell space. Most damning of all, Vreen's personal transport had docked at the Sector 7 construction facility 2 days before the sabotage attempt. Korath gathered the evidence and made his way back to the council chambers. The debate had reached a critical point. A vote was about to be called on whether to decommission the Defiance program entirely. Before the council votes, Korath announced, his voice cutting through the argument, "There is evidence that must be presented." The chamber fell silent. Admiral Korath rarely spoke during council sessions, preferring to let others debate while he observed. When he did speak, others listened. "Counselor Vreen," Korath said, his words precise and deadly. "Can you explain why you received 3 million credits from a Krell financial institution 6 weeks ago? Or why your encrypted communications have been traced to Krell intelligence networks? Or perhaps you would like to explain why your transport was at the human construction facility shortly before someone sabotaged their reactor?" Vreen's compound eyes widened. For a moment he seemed to consider denying everything. Then his mandibles clicked together in what might have been resignation or defiance. "The Krell understand what you fools cannot see," Vreen said. "Humanity is dangerous. They do not follow the rules. They do not respect the established order. If we allow them to continue building weapons like the Defiance, they will upset the balance that has kept peace in the galaxy for generations." "So you committed treason," Korath said flatly. "You sabotaged a construction facility and endangered civilian lives to serve a foreign power." Security officers were already moving toward Vreen's position. The counselor did not resist as they took him into custody. As he was led from the chamber, he looked back at the assembled representatives. "You will see," Vreen said. "The humans will be your downfall. They do not know when to stop." The chamber erupted in chaos after Vreen's removal. The revelation that a sitting counselor had been working for the Krell sent shockwaves through the political establishment. Species that had been opposed to the Defiance began reconsidering their positions. If the Krell feared humanity's warship enough to resort to espionage and sabotage, perhaps there was more value in the design than they had recognized. Ambassador Chen seized the moment. "The Krell are afraid," he said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "They have destroyed our colonies, killed our people, and now they have corrupted our political systems to prevent us from defending ourselves. The question before this council is simple. Will we allow fear to dictate our actions, or will we stand together against a common enemy?" The debate resumed, but the tone had shifted. Kvalix, who had been quietly analyzing the combat data from the Sector 7 engagement, requested permission to speak. "I have opposed the Defiance program from the beginning," Kvalix said. "I believed the design was flawed, that the reactor would fail, that the humans were reckless and dangerous. I was wrong. He paused, letting the admission sink in. The combat data shows a vessel that performed beyond all expectations. The quantum flux reactor operated at 140% of its theoretical maximum, without failure. The ship survived damage that would have destroyed any conventional warship. Most importantly, 200 humans held off 3 Krell heavy cruisers and won. He turned to face the human delegation. They did not win because they were lucky. They won because they were better. Better engineered, better commanded, better trained. The Krell fear the Defiance not because it is reckless, but because it is effective. I propose that instead of decommissioning the program, we expand it. Let the humans build their fleet, and let the Council learn from what they have achieved. The vote was called. One by one, the species representatives cast their decisions. When the final tally was displayed, Ambassador Chen felt relief wash over him. The motion to decommission the Defiance had failed. In its place, a new authorization was approved. Humanity would complete the Defiance and begin construction on 5 additional vessels of the same class. Chen found Vasquez after the session ended. She was standing at a viewport looking out at the stars. "We did it," he said. "They approved the program." "They approved it because they are afraid," Vasquez replied. "Not because they believe in us." "Does it matter why they approved it as long as we can continue?" Vasquez was quiet for a moment. "I suppose not. But Elena, there is something else. Intelligence reports suggest the Krell are massing a fleet. 40 or more warships gathering at their forward bases. They are preparing for a major offensive. How long do we have? 6 months. Maybe less." Chen looked out at the stars. "We need to finish the Defiance and get those other ships into production as fast as possible. Because when the Krell come, they are going to come with everything they have." The Battle of Sanctuary began with silence. 43 Krell warships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sanctuary system, home to 3 Council species and more than 2 billion sentient beings. The Krell formation was perfect, disciplined, and utterly terrifying in its scale. This was not a raid or a skirmish. This was an invasion fleet designed to break the Council's will and establish Krell dominance over the galactic core. Captain Webb stood on the bridge of the Defiance, now fully repaired and upgraded after the Sector 7 engagement. Around him, his crew worked with calm efficiency, the product of 6 months of intensive training and preparation. Through the main viewport, he could see the Council defense fleet assembling. 15 warships of various classes, representing half a dozen species. "All ships report ready for combat," the communications officer announced. "Admiral Korath is broadcasting from the Council flagship. He is assigning tactical command to you, Captain." Webb felt the weight of that responsibility settle on his shoulders. 15 ships against 43. The mathematics were brutal, but he had faced impossible odds before. "Open a channel to all ships," Webb ordered. "This is Captain Webb of the Defiance. The Krell have come here expecting an easy victory. They think we will break and run when we see their numbers. They are wrong. Today we show them that this is our space, these are our worlds, and we do not surrender. All ships assume attack formation Delta. Stay close to the Defiance and follow our lead." Vasquez, now holding the rank of Commodore and serving as Webb's tactical coordinator, studied the holographic display showing both fleets. They are moving into a standard Krell battle formation. 3 waves with their heavy cruisers in the center and lighter vessels on the flanks. They will try to overwhelm us with concentrated fire. Then we do not give them the chance, Webb replied. "Helm, take us straight into their center formation at maximum acceleration. All ships weapons free. Target their heavy cruisers first." The Defiance surged forward, the quantum flux reactor pouring power through every system. The other Council ships followed, though some captains transmitted private concerns about Webb's aggressive tactics. They had been trained to fight at range, to use shields and maneuvers to avoid damage. Webb's approach was the opposite: close fast, hit hard, and never give the enemy time to think, War Master Drethok. Commanding the Krell fleet from his flagship, watched the Council ships charge directly at his formation. He remembered the Defiance from their previous encounter, remembered how that single ship had destroyed 2 of his cruisers. Now she was leading an entire fleet in what appeared to be a suicidal attack. "All ships focus fire on the Defiance," Drethok ordered. "I want that ship destroyed before she reaches engagement range." Energy weapons from 24 Krell ships converged on the approaching human warship. But the Defiance was no longer the incomplete vessel from Sector 7. She now had shields, advanced point defense systems, and armor that had been refined based on combat experience. The Krell fire splashed against her shields in brilliant displays of light and energy. Shields holding at 70%, Rodriguez reported from his damage control station. Point defense is intercepting 95% of incoming missiles. We are taking some hits, but nothing critical. Webb watched the range counter drop. 5,000 kilometers, 4,000, 3,000. At 2,000 kilometers, he gave the order. All ships fire. The Defiance's main railgun battery spoke, hurling tungsten rounds at relativistic velocities. The other Council ships added their own weapons to the barrage. Particle beams, missile volleys, plasma torpedoes. The combined firepower struck the Krell center formation like a hammer. 2 Krell heavy cruisers died in the first salvo, their shields overloaded and their hulls torn apart by kinetic impacts. A third lost power and began tumbling out of formation. The Krell line, so perfect and disciplined moments before, suddenly had a gap in its center. All ships through the gap, Webb ordered. Do not let them reform. The Council fleet punched through the Krell formation, their ships turning and wheeling like fighters despite their massive size. The Defiance led the charge, her weapons never stopping as she engaged target after target. Behind her, Kvalix commanded a battle group of Tharn warships, using tactics he had learned from studying human combat doctrine. Target the flagship, Vasquez called out, highlighting Drethok's command ship on the tactical display. If we can take out their command structure, the rest of the fleet will lose coordination. Webb nodded. Helm, plot an intercept course. Engineering, I need everything the reactor can give us. You have it, Captain, came Okoye's voice from engineering. The reactor is running at 160% of rated capacity. We designed in a lot of safety margins for moments like this. The Defiance accelerated beyond what any Krell captain thought possible, closing the distance to the flagship in seconds. Drethok saw her coming and tried to maneuver, but the human ship was too fast, too aggressive. Ramming speed, Webb ordered, echoing his tactics from Sector 7. All hands brace for impact. Captain, we can destroy them with weapons fire, Vasquez protested. We do not need to ram them. This is not about destruction, Webb said calmly. This is about sending a message. They need to fear us. The Defiance crashed into the Krell flagship's shields at full acceleration. The shields flashed once, twice, then collapsed under the kinetic force. The human warship's reinforced prow struck the flagship's hull and kept going, tearing through compartments and systems like paper. But Webb was not trying to ram through the entire ship. At the last moment, he fired the maneuvering thrusters, angling the Defiance away from the flagship's core. The movement brought the ship's main weapons to bear at point-blank range, aimed directly into the wound the ramming attack had created. Fire, Webb said quietly. The railgun rounds traveled less than 100 meters before they struck home, detonating inside the Krell flagship. Secondary explosions rippled through the massive vessel as reactor containment failed. Drethok had time for one final thought about the terrifying effectiveness of human warfare before his ship tore itself apart. The destruction of the flagship broke the Krell fleet's cohesion. Without central coordination, individual captains began making their own decisions. Some tried to continue the attack. Others, seeing a third of their fleet already destroyed, chose survival over glory and began retreating toward hyperspace jump points. All ships, pursue, Webb ordered. Do not let them regroup. The Council fleet chased the fleeing Krell across the system, destroying another 7 ships before the survivors managed to escape into hyperspace. When the battle finally ended, the Sanctuary system was safe, though the wreckage of 36 Krell warships drifted among the stars. On the bridge of the Defiance, the crew allowed themselves to breathe. They had taken damage, lost systems, and seen friends die, but they had won. The Krell invasion had been broken. Casualty report, Webb said quietly. 12 dead, 38 wounded, Rodriguez replied. The ship is at 60% combat effectiveness. We need repairs, but she will fly. Kvalix's voice came through the comm system. Captain Webb, the Council ships report minimal casualties thanks to your tactics. We lost no vessels. I must admit, your aggressive approach saved lives by ending the battle quickly. Webb nodded, too tired to feel satisfaction. Get the wounded to medical. Begin damage control procedures. And someone check on the colony worlds. Make sure they are safe. 6 months later, the repaired and upgraded Defiance held station above New Terra, humanity's primary colony world. Around her, 5 sister ships of the same class floated in formation, The indomitable, the relentless, the resolute, the vindication, and the redemption. Together, they represented humanity's commitment to defending not just their own worlds, but all council space. Vasquez, now holding the rank of Grand Admiral and commanding the Joint Council Fleet operations, stood on the observation deck of the orbital station, watching the warships with pride. Beside her, Kvalek studied the vessels with professional interest. "I still cannot believe you humans built 6 of them," Kvalek said. "Each one more powerful than the last. You have changed everything about how we think about warfare." "We built them because we had to," Vasquez replied. "Because someone had to stand up to the Krell. Because the Council said it could not be done." "And you proved us wrong," Kvalek admitted. "About everything. The reactor design, the combat effectiveness, the tactical doctrine. You were right and we were wrong." "You were not wrong about everything," Vasquez said with a slight smile. "You were right that we do not know when to quit. That human stubbornness, that refusal to accept that something is impossible. That is what makes us dangerous." Kvalek's expression might have been a smile, though it was hard to tell with his alien features. "Dangerous to your enemies, but invaluable to your friends." On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Webb received his new orders. The Council was sending the human fleet to patrol the border regions, to serve as a rapid response force against future Krell incursions. It was recognition of what they had achieved, acknowledgement that humanity had earned its place among the galactic powers. "All ships prepare for departure," Webb ordered. "We have work to do." The 6 warships fired their engines in perfect synchronization, accelerating away from the station and toward the jump point that would take them to the frontier. Behind them, engineers at the construction facility were already beginning work on the next generation of human warships, building on the lessons learned from the Defiance. The Council had said it could not be built. They had been wrong. They had said it could not fight. They had been wrong. They had said humanity did not belong among the stars. They had been wrong about everything except one thing. Humans did not know when to quit. And in a galaxy full of threats and challenges, that stubbornness, that refusal to accept the impossible, might just be enough to save them all. Webb nodded, too tired to feel satisfaction. "Get the wounded to medical. Begin damage control procedures. And someone check on the colony worlds. Make sure they are safe." 6 months later, the repaired and upgraded Defiance held station above New Terra, humanity's primary colony world. Around her, 5 sister ships of the same class floated in formation: the indomitable, the relentless, the resolute, the vindication, and the redemption. Together, they represented humanity's commitment to defending not just their own worlds, but all council space. Vasquez, now holding the rank of Grand Admiral and commanding the Joint Council Fleet operations, stood on the observation deck of the orbital station, watching the warships with pride. Beside her, Kvalek studied the vessels with professional interest. "I still cannot believe you humans built 6 of them," Kvalek said. "Each one more powerful than the last. You have changed everything about how we think about warfare." "We built them because we had to," Vasquez replied. "Because someone had to stand up to the Krell. Because the Council said it could not be done." "And you proved us wrong," Kvalek admitted. "About everything. The reactor design, the combat effectiveness, the tactical doctrine. You were right and we were wrong." "You were not wrong about everything," Vasquez said with a slight smile. "You were right that we do not know when to quit. That human stubbornness, that refusal to accept that something is impossible. That is what makes us dangerous." Kvalek's expression might have been a smile, though it was hard to tell with his alien features. "Dangerous to your enemies, but invaluable to your friends." On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Webb received his new orders. The Council was sending the human fleet to patrol the border regions, to serve as a rapid response force against future Krell incursions. It was recognition of what they had achieved, acknowledgement that humanity had earned its place among the galactic powers. "All ships prepare for departure," Webb ordered. "We have work to do." The 6 warships fired their engines in perfect synchronization, accelerating away from the station and toward the jump point that would take them to the frontier. Behind them, engineers at the construction facility were already beginning work on the next generation of human warships, building on the lessons learned from the Defiance. The Council had said it could not be built. They had been wrong. They had said it could not fight. They had been wrong. They had said humanity did not belong among the stars. They had been wrong about everything except one thing. Humans did not know when to quit. And in a galaxy full of threats and challenges, that stubbornness, that refusal to accept the impossible, might just be enough to save them all.